A friend of mine once had a brilliant premise for an animated satire called The Superthinkers. It went something like this: Aleister Crowley, who'd spent the past century holed up in a secret lair on Pikes Peak, travels through time and gathers up the remains of the world's greatest thinkers in little powder packets. On each episode, he reconstitutes one of the great thinkers of history, Marx, Nietszche, Kierkegaard, and sets them loose on the world to cure the ills of neoliberalism, only to be derailed by their own vices as well as the apathy, ennui, and spectacle of 21st century life. Poet Nietszche would be right at home in the Superthinkers writer's room. In fact, his recent collection, Opting Out Early, New in Poem 4 from his 2007 collection, Far Out Library Software. For example, Karl Marx has become a raver, while Engels is indulging in opiates, watching reality TV and appearing on Oprah. Look, great diva, me and my buddy can be the next marketing sensation. Look how cute Das Kapital's Russian cover ISWE will make it at a movie soon. Mao Zedong, Plato, Rimbaud, Street Augustine, and many others also show up as foils in these poems, most of which ultimately emphasize the absurdity of love in the time of late capitalism. Here's poem 18 from his 2011 collection, Thanks for the Office Window, in its entirety. In the frozen vegetable aisle lap dance security forces. Why do you care about the well-being of the enemy? I am wondering, how could anyone trust anyone writing a collection of Star Wars poems? She was the go-go dancer from hell. He was a poet fond of cliches. Eventually an infinite amount of sadness accumulated in the IT department. Heidegger, Hegel, Wittgenstein, Kant, Spinoza, Kierkegaard, Nietzsche, Transcendentalists, Empiricists, Benjamin Adorno, Marx, Situationist, International, Foucault, Habermas, Derrida, Isaac Deleuze, and Guattari. Word said Fred Jameson, Terry Eagleton. No amount of thinking or thinkers, the poet implies, can outthink the infinite amount of sadness that hangs behind all Western male thought, which fails, inevitably, fails at the feet of love, however imperfect. Such romanticism is infinitely charming. The darting, casually fragmented texture of these poems feels at times like Apollinaire's cubist approach to the appropriation of overheard conversation. But the more you read, the more it's clear that Czar is borrowing lines from conversations he's having in his own head. The darkly comic turns he takes serve to reconcile the many voices he carries. He's an American of Egyptian origin. He's a software engineer by trade and a poet by avocation. He writes in English, his second language, and often about losing his native Arabic. He's a Coptic Christian originally from a Muslim-majority country, and he's a middle-class Marxist. Czar's honesty with himself regarding these apparent contradictions and his unwillingness to take himself too seriously keep the poems fresh even when the stakes seem highest. In several of the book's later sections, Czar takes the reader back to Cairo with him during the period of deep political uncertainty and transition after Hosni Mubarak's resignation in 2011. But not even the Muslim Brotherhood's ominous rise seems to spoil his sense that history itself is ultimately a running joke. Here are two short poems. Ram Cairo Poems, mid-July, end of September 2011 to One in a City Under Deconstruction, where ghosts come and go, throwing stones at Michelangelo. There is longing in the streets, because why not? Love is mostly a misunderstood exercise, hanging out with quality nihilists, everyone is catching up with everyone, bad constitutions drag you down. 25 Biting into a prolonged nostalgia. There are well-meaning CIA operatives around and they mostly train kind assassins. A love, oh careless love. The joy he finds in these dark historical moments gives Czar's poems a timelessness that he doesn't seem to seek. At times, they read like a diary detailing a revolution in broken haikus. For example, in Second Cairo Trip, etc., Feb. 2012, Czar writes, in a city under heavy rebranding there are bearded men and lovers walking to McDonald's, the one next to the armored vehicle. Even in poems like this, in which the author seems to do little more than report what he sees, you feel the way his bicultural vision gives him an unsentimental clarity that crosses back and forth between his worlds to arrive at the truth. McDonald's. Ultimately, Nietsche's poems are serious about poetry and what it can reveal, even when it jests. One could easily crack open this 400-page book almost anywhere and find the kind of insight that only a cosmopolitan comic poet with a philosopher's computer chip on his shoulder can see. He writes, for instance, "Fuck the Police" is a love song to no one in particular but a future that will never come. And the world is fucked yet you are alive and I might be too. Lyrics to live by from a super thinker who knows he can only love the slow-motion apocalypse that is, and always will be our world. Opting out, early, new.